we are going to be talking about, I think, your favorite topic
on the planet
on this episode of the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil and Renee. You know, last week we had the beginning of the topic that we started with from the book. We started talking about trust.
What book?
The Rich Relationship, Our Marital Code to Oneness, that was just released back in October, but now the actual hard prints are out there, so you can get those. But that's not, we just going to be sharing some of the things.
I just
from
like
the book.
to hear you say the name of the book.
Okay, that's okay. But we're going to be talking about identity.
Yes, from the code,
which is the second topic in the code. We shared the first one last week.
Yes.
But we're going to be sharing this one.
So it's tie. And the first one, it was trust.
Yes, and it was interesting.
Yes,
good.
It was.
And we're going to talk about identity this week.
Yes, we are.
Coming
Stay
up
tuned.
next.
I hope you're ready. Buckle up.
Welcome to the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil
and Renee, where amazing things happen. Our goal is to help build, repair, and restore healthy relationships.
Our primary focus is on the marriage relationship. However, the topics are applicable to the relationships that we value most. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.
Well, I said it in the intro that this was like one of your favorite topics.
It
I
is.
mean, you like to talk about a lot of them, but this one specifically about identity.
Yes,
and we're gonna
because it's so crucial to your development.
Okay. You want to elaborate on that one in the beginning?
Well, you know, Colossians 1:16 says, "For by him all things were created in heaven and in earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him." And that's the foundation of knowing who you were created by and for. And when you know who you belong to, it really helps you to have an unshakable identity.
Right. And we kind of talked about that, and we talked about it a little bit before in all of some of the other episodes, but this week we're going to kind of address it specifically and talk about it in the context of relationships, because we know that if you don't have a good solid identity in who you are as an individual in your relationship, it's going to be challenging to be in any relationship with anyone.
Because it really begins with, who are you? Who told you that? And how do you make people feel?
Mm-hmm.
And when you know who you are, when you know who you belong to, because so many of the things that in our society we find our identity in, I did it for a lot of years with my career. I was an Air Force wife. I was a mom. I was a sister. You know, your identity can be a title.
Right.
And not necessarily, or it can just be a proclamation, but it could not necessarily be who you really are.
I think a lot of guys tend to identify and wrap their identity in a lot of times their vocation.
Yes.
Or their skills and ability, you know, where it used to be sports way back in the day, but now it's video games. But
yeah, that's a whole other thing.
It is. But the whole point I was making is it seems like guys, we tend to lean more towards identity and what we do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when your vocation, I was sharing this, I think maybe last week with a couple of my brother friends that we were just talking. We get together and talk once a week. And one of the things we talked about was I'm going to bring it up right now, the election.
Yeah.
But it's over and done with now. But the point that we were talking about when it comes to the election, I said, it is a lot like when you retire from the military.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a awesome position. You can have a lot of authority. You can have people who serve under you and report to you and all those types of things. And the day you retire,
yes, it's
the
all
day
gone. Like at 12 midnight, it's over.
It's like all
it erases
everything is stripped away from you, and a lot of guys and women.
Mm-hmm.
I only can speak from a guy's perspective, but I'm sure some of my sisters who retire from the military may experience some of the same things, where you have none of that authority, and if you had all that tied up in your identity, it can be very unnerving. Because you really don't know who you are because you have been doing it for so long. And it's just like being the former president and all the presidents past. Well, the day they walk out of that office, all that authority, the most powerful office in the world, is gone.
Yeah, it is. Because really, and I think the thing that really helped me when it comes to, you know, one of the things to talk about in the book is that why are so many people struggling with their identity? Mm-hmm. And I think a part of it is that we think that we'd rather say we don't know what we are versus acknowledging that we don't know who we are. And who we are is not what we do. It's the things, it's our values. It's our
character.
It's your character. It's your relationships.
And that's where it begins with, if your relationship with Christ comes first with
has
God.
To be the foundation.
Because if you don't find it in that, you're going to struggle in every other area. That's just what we believe. And that's what we kind of echo.
It seems so, it's like, how could it be that simple? Because it is. And the reason why we struggle with it is because we want it to be, well, no, I will be successful when I have a certain car or when I have a certain title. It's like all of those are things that can be taken away, or just like you were talking about, that they're temporary. Mm-hmm. But your character and your values and your goals are things that shape a part of your purpose. And so one of the things that we talk about all the time is you can't give away what you don't have, and you can't give someone yourself if you don't know who you are. So I think it's really important that because before you're ever married, you're an individual.
Yes.
And so a lot of people think, oh, it's rich relationships, it's just for married people. But before we were married people, we were individuals.
And that is probably the best time that you can really discover who and what and all the things that you're interested in. And I'm not talking about just hobbies, who you are as an individual.
Right. The things that matter to you. And to me, the easiest way to summarize, your identity is, what breaks your heart? Mm-hmm. What are the things that when you see it, it bothers you? Your identity is normally going to be attached to the purpose that God has for your life.
And I love the equation that you wrote about it in the book. Identity is equal to purpose, mission, and application.
Yeah.
And when you wrote about it, you were talking about it in the enoughness.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that part?
I love the enoughness of God, because I think so many times if I think about it, like you talked about for men, that it's their careers, I think that for women, it becomes who we take care of. Our children, our husbands, our homes. That becomes our identity. We become, for the longest, oh, hi, this is Gil's wife, or this is Sergeant Beaver's wife, or this is Aaron's mom. And if you don't know that I'm Renee, if I don't know that I'm Renee, I can begin to identify with a title versus my purpose.
And that can be very challenging, even from a wife's perspective, mm-hmm. because you can get lost in that.
Yeah, because a part of you start to believe that what you do is who you are. And what you do is just a part of your assignment. Who you are is the things that, it's not so much that you're doing, you're being. It's who are you being? Who have you become? What are the things that really define who you are as a person? And that's not just what you do. It's how do you make people feel? And I think that when you begin to really discover your true purpose and your identity, when you discover your identity, it kind of helps you understand your purpose. And then from there, you have to do something with it. Mm-hmm. It's a call to serve. It's a call to, I'm looking at all these things on the back of this, it's a call to understand that you are more than enough. It's not, and the thing that I really love about the enoughness of God is, you know that you have enough, because you don't have to have a certain amount of things. You know that enough is enough. You know how to set boundaries. You know how to tell yourself no. You know how to just pull back. And then you also understand that everything about what makes you who you are comes from something that's bigger than you.
Because that's where the incompleteness that you may feel when you first start out, not just in any new relationship, but even in an existing one, because if you have had things wrapped up in your identity and your position and your roles and all the hats that you may wear in a family structure or even as an individual, you're going to feel incomplete too.
Yeah.
And that incompleteness can lead to you on a kind of a wandering time where you just really don't know, almost like, who am I? If you have to ever ask yourself that question, who am I? And that's a good place to start.
And it's important to ask yourself that question. Because I think about when we were in our 20s, when we were in Louisiana, that was a really good time in my life where I really had the time to begin to discover well, who is Renee? What do you like? What don't you like? What are the things that are important to you? What are the things that you would do even if you didn't get paid to do it? Mm-hmm. And I think that we live in a society where we're doing so much of what we want and what we think that we don't leave time to really discover the things that make us feel fulfilled and that we enjoy, and that when we're gone, it's going to live on beyond us. Because so many times we're just thinking about what we want and what we think. And so identity is not about being selfish. When you discover your identity, it teaches you to be selfless.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we always like to share in just not just talking about a particular topic or subject, but we always like to give you some actionable things that you can apply. And usually in our episodes, we usually kind of do it at the end, but we're going to do that, kind of sprinkle it throughout, because we're sharing with you some of the things that we talk about in the book. But these are things that you can do every single day. And I love the very first one is finding your identity starts with, what do you do the first thing in the morning?
Yes.
You talked about that in the book when you say the first thing you do in the morning, because if you set the tone, that is setting the tone.
Your priorities.
For your daily life. And if you grab your phone and go to Facebook first, do I go to the news first? Do I go to one of those sports pages first? Or do I read my Bible first?
Because if you think about it, if you're going to a source first, then that means that you're all looking for the same thing. Mm-hmm. But if you go to the source, which is God, the Bible, and then that way he can give you your own personal instructions on what he wants you to do. Because although we all are created in his image and his likeness, we all have different mandates. We all have different passions. And so if everyone is going to a source to be entertained
right
for the first thing in the morning, then that's going to set the tone for us. And that's why I think there's so much road rage, and there's so many people are struggling with their identity. So many people are struggling with depression and suicide, because instead of us going to the source, we're going to another person that needs a source as well.
And he even gave us the answer to it already in the very beginning in Matthew 6:33. Seek first.
Yes. And it sounds really simple, y'all, but the habits that you practice are going to shape and mold you. So if you say that you love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your strength, the first person that we should be interacting with when we open our eyes is the Lord, because he gave us breath. He gave us purpose. He has a plan for us. And so it's just a matter of us saying, I'm not going to trust me. I'm not going to trust what I think or what I want. I'm going to trust you. And so therefore, the way that I do that is by reading the Bible or listening to the Bible or listening to a praise and worship song, or just spending a little bit of time just being quiet and still before you begin your day.
Because it's amazing how it can really change. Because I remember growing up, I used to wake up mad. How do you wake up mad?
Well, because you go to bed mad.
Or discontentment. And I think that's when, as I got older, I looked at it and I think it was the discontentment that I had in my life. And this was before I knew Christ. I used to have, like you say, go to bed with an attitude, wake up with an attitude, and not know why.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think about, because me, I wake up happy. That's just
you always been that way.
And so, but I realize it's because I tend to be a very positive person. I tend to try to look at what could be good, what could be positive. And so I think a part of that is it's a choice.
It is.
Everything is a choice. And so when you realize that when people are angry or upset, it really has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with how they feel about themselves. And so a lot of times when we're talking about your identity is not just one picture it's not one thing. It's a big photo album. It's not just a snapshot of someone. And again, to really understand your identity, it's going to take time. It's going to take you being intentional. It's going to take you asking yourself some hard questions. And that's a decision that each of us has to make. Because I remember you'd always say that, well, what do you mean your identity? What do you mean? What is that? What helped you better understand it?
Well, it's not so much that I didn't understand it as much as I tend to lean more in the logical sense. I just think of it in a natural Who am I? Identity, as far as I know, I'm a husband. I know I'm a father. I know.
But those are titles.
Those are roles.
Yes,
exactly.
those are roles.
But it's a journey that I had to start taking inward to know, like we talked about already, what are the things that I value? What are the things that are important to me? What are the character traits that I believe that are the essence of who I am as an individual? Even if I wasn't married to Renee, I wasn't Aaron's dad, or I wasn't Sergeant Beavers back in the military, or now Mr. Beavers in some role that I may have. If all that is stripped away,
what's left?
Who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? And that's something that you have to ask yourself. And it's a tough road sometimes because you can be caught up in all these identities and roles and things that you have done and not really understand who you are. So when you go away, it made me think about guys who go through, as they say, the midlife crisis. You hit a certain point and all of a sudden you start doing all these things that you had suppressed or didn't do for so long, and wonder, and people will say it's an identity crisis. Well, that identity crisis, it's
because you need the time to really, and I think that unfortunately we make that a negative thing, but all of us at some point in our life are going to have an identity crisis, and it's just a matter of, what do you do? Do you surround yourself with other people who have a sense of who they are, so that you can begin to realize that it's not a role or a responsibility or a title? It's really the essence of the purpose that God created you for. And I understand the difference between what you do and when you're just being who He created you to be.
Right. And then we're talking about identity on this episode of the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil and Renee. You know, a couple weeks ago, well, last week we talked about trust already, and we're going to be sharing with you some more of the topics.
From the code
on identity. And we're going to come pick it back up with service, how that relates to your identity.
Yes.
So, but at this time, we always like to say thank you.
Thank you.
You showed me something that was pretty amazing. A lot of times you do. We've been doing this over a year, almost a year and a half now.
Yeah.
Trying to be faithfully and doing it every week. And you showed me some of the downloads. And a lot of times you don't realize there are real people out there listening.
Yes, there are.
I know it sounds weird. I know we come in here and we come into the studio and we sit down and we just talk about these things. And you wondering, is it having an impact on anybody, or is anybody even listening? And sometimes, and the good part about the virtual world is you can get a lot of your things out there.
It's called analytics.
But, well, that's in your area. But I wanted to say thank you, because Renee showed me how many people just downloaded the episode. And I could not imagine speaking to that many people. And it's not about us.
Yeah.
We said that in our very first episode. This is not about us. We just wanted to share some of the things that God has put on our heart as it relates to marriage and relationships, and share with someone, hoping it will bless them and maybe give them some things to think about and maybe apply in their own life.
Yeah.
So, but at this time, we wanted to say thank you. I wanted to say thank you. I know you say it all the time with your little intro, but I'm going to say thank you, and we really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, everyone who listens and who downloads, who shares it, who... You share it with a friend, because if there's something that's good that's going on, you're going to tell people about it.
Yeah, you're going to post it and say.
So please share it.
As they say, like it.
Yeah, like it, share it, post it. Tell someone, right now on our website, we have a section. It's called, What Are They Saying? It's called, It says, Say What? Feel free to go there and leave your comments. Say what? That's Lyric's favorite term. Say what? And so you guys are welcome to go there, and you can, leave us a message. Let us know how this has helped you, because we learn from one another. And so you be brave enough to leave your comment, to let people know. And if you got the book, we got all the books out. I had a big giant wagon that I took to the post office, and we got everyone's books mailed out. And that was just such a great sense of just relief and gratitude. So thank you for everyone who purchased the signed copy of the book. Thank you for everyone who's bought the ebook. Thank you for everyone who has purchased the paperback. And now you can also purchase the hard copy, which is geared towards the Rich Relationship Refuge team. We're building a team, y'all, because we can't do it all. We want to make sure everybody has someone that can walk alongside them. And we're just two people. So we have a team of other people who are going to help us do that. And so thank you to all of those amazing co-authors. And thanks for everyone. And Lord, thank you for the gift of this platform. Thank you for everyone who has helped us to reach people in ways, and people we may never see or meet, but we can still touch their lives.
Gil and Renee Beers' over 30-year relationship is the genesis for the Rich Relationship Podcast, which is designed to empower individuals with the tools, principles, and the community needed to unpack ourselves, our past, and our preconceived notions associated with relationships.
Let's get empty and grow together so that our lives will be filled with love and healthy, rich relationships. Now let's go into our show.
So we're actually talking about identity in this episode of the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil and Renee. And I wanted to jump right into one of the things you asked me a question about: when did I start understanding my identity? And I think one of the good responses to that is what we wrote about a little bit in the book. It came when I started serving other people.
Yeah.
When you start putting aside some of the things that are important to you from a selfish standpoint and start looking at how can I help someone else, in the very first service kind of has to start with your spouse. I know we're talking about this in the context of relationships. I tried to always put you first in our relationship, as far as not just you.
Do very well at that.
And it's a conscious effort because it's not natural. I think in the human condition,
selfless? No, it's not.
Yeah, in the human condition, we want to just think about me.
Me.
I.
What about me? What about me? I want. Sound like Keith Sweat.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know who Keith Sweat is, that's a blast from the past. But when I had to start thinking about that, that's where it really started with, in that service. And when you think about that, even in your spouse, what I was getting at was serving your spouse will kind of help you understand who you are as an individual.
And a part of learning about service is something that we don't normally think about, but in serving, in taking steps towards anything, we are going to have successes and failures. And I think that when you understand that success, in order to succeed, you have to fail. And I think so many times we think that when we fail, we're a failure. Or when we succeed, we're a success. Again, those are just things that we're doing. That's not who we are, because God didn't call us to be one or the other. He's called us to be a combination of them both. Mm-hmm. Because success and failure are just as much a part of your story and you discovering your identity. Because one of the things I loved, our pastor, when we were in San Antonio, he talked about when you go to college and, you know, he not only did he learn who he was, he also learned who he was not. Mm-hmm. And so don't be afraid in the journey to discover your identity to fail. Don't put too much stock in your success, because it's going to be ebb and flow. You're going to have successes and failures, and that's just as much a part of you discovering, because I really believe that who you really are is who you are when things fail. Mm-hmm. I think that your failures show more of your character and identity than just when you're succeeding. Because it's easy to be happy. My godmother called them fair weather friends. It's easy to be great when everything is going great.
Right.
But who are you? How do you react when things go bad, or when things don't go the way we planned? And so that's how we really begin to discover who we are. God puts all those things in the obstacle course of our life so that we can really have some stamina and some wherewithal and some empathy for other people, because you'll never know what it's like to fail. You see people only succeeding, and you don't understand that they had to fail first.
Yeah. And I want to share one of these things that you wrote, that I had the opportunity to actually read the book. I know it's crazy that we wrote the book, but believe it or not, when you write a book, sometimes you don't sit down and read it to enjoy it. And you said something in the book, and it's in line with what we're talking about tonight, about identity. And it's about, how do you love? Mm. And one of the statements that when I was reading it, it literally stuck out at me. And I was like, wow, I never thought about it in that sense of, and you said it here, and I'm quoting you. Now I have to say I quote you.
I love when you do that. It's so bizarre.
God created love for us. We cannot create love. We can only share love. When you love God, we can then learn to love ourselves and love others. And that is the essence of what we're talking about tonight, because we can't give away something that's not already there. And if you think about that and in reference to your identity, if you're struggling in areas of your identity, sometimes the people that are closest to you can help you on that journey and help you to discover. But what we have to do when people share those things with us is to listen.
Yeah. And it's funny because we were talking this week about just the different types of, the ways people respond. Are you going to be the kind of person that you can let someone lead you and guide you? Or do you decide you're going to break out and create your own path? And in some areas, that's okay.
That's the way to do it. Sometimes you have to do it.
But for the most part, the Bible says a wise person learns from other people's mistake and a fool learns from his own. Mm-hmm. So a part of us developing our identity and understanding our identity is taking advantage and leveraging the people in our lives that have already weathered the storm.
Or have our best interests at heart.
Yes, who love us. Yeah. And that's why God puts us in a family. He doesn't, autonomy may be our country's anthem, but the only thing about autonomy is that I think I say it all the time, the word autonomy makes me think of a ton of me. Mm-hmm. And identity is not going to be developed if the only thing you're thinking about and focusing on is what you want and what you think and what you feel. And it's not just about you. The epitome of understanding your identity is to look at Jesus, because he was selfless. He served others. He put other people before him, even when he didn't want to. Mm-hmm. And so a part of it is looking at the greatest example of identity, and that's our relationship with Christ. And then the people around us, because we're all under construction. We're all learning and growing. And your identity is something that once you understand it, it gives you a sense. I talk about it being unshakable. When you have an identity that is in Christ, it doesn't matter about the stock market, it doesn't matter about who the president is, it doesn't matter if we're on lockdown or if it's 1979 and we can run the streets. It's a matter of understanding that who I am has nothing to do with everything on the outside, has everything to do with everything that's on the inside. And the conversations I'm having with myself, the things that I hear and I read in the Bible that I say, that's what God says about me. And so those are some of the greatest ways to kind of really understand and walk in and appreciate your unique identity.
Because when you have those identity things on lockdown and you kind of have a good sense of who you are and what you're all about, it's going to make you better in the relationships that you're in, because it's going to bring an air of confidence in those relationships that you won't question.
Yeah.
You won't question people's motives. You won't even question yourself. A lot of times if you have self-doubt, that usually means it's close to something in your identity that's maybe not clear to you.
Yeah.
And that's important to really understand.
Because it's important. One of the things that's really important is what I talk about, who told you that. When you know what God said about you and someone or something says something contrary to that, it's very easy for you to go back to the source, the creator, the author, and what does he say about you? You are more than enough in Christ Jesus. He has a purpose and a plan for you. He has a hope for you and a future. He's written your name in the palm of his hand. If that doesn't make you feel good about who you are, then you don't understand the value of what Jesus did in order to be able to call you son and daughter.
Because you are very valuable, even if you don't have 100% identity, understand everything about yourself. Because like you say, we're in a journey, but God loves you more than you can even imagine, even when we are clueless about who we are and our identity.
Isn't it beautiful we're to die for?
It is.
So we should live for Christ and realize that we are more than enough in Christ Jesus.
And we're going to end it right there. And we're going to share next week the last topic of this
tie
from the code,
which is probably your favorite.
Yeah, it is, but we're going to share that with you next week.
Yes, we will. Stay tuned.
It's going to be on empathy. Don't forget, don't tell her I told y'all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your investment in time. Remember to subscribe to the show and hit the notification icon to be notified when new episodes are posted on the podcast platform that you're listening from.
Or you can always find us on our website at richrelationshipsus.com or our YouTube channel, Rich Relationships with Gil and Renee. If you found this podcast helpful or you think it could help someone that you know and care about, please pass it along and share it with them.
And also, you can always send your questions and comments to richrelationships.us@gmail.com. This is a weekly podcast, and the new episodes are going to be posted on Monday by 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.